I'm recording this video to answer some questions that I get in the comment section of just about every one of my covers. Your guys' questions are always somewhere along the lines of, why don't I see any mics in your videos? How do you make your videos? How do you get your drums to sound good? How do you get everything to sync up? So in order to answer all of these questions, I need to take you guys through a bit of an overview on the process that I go through to create one of these videos. I'm going to take you through all of that right now. One thing I want to mention before I dive into this video is that I'm going to follow up this with more specific versions in the future where I cover the exact pieces of gear, the brands, the makes, the model numbers that I use to create the videos. I'm not going to get that specific for this video. I'm going to take you more on an overview of things, and then in the future get more in depth with exactly what's going on. So let us begin. Step 1, deciding on the song. When I'm deciding on what song I'm going to do next, I think about 4 things. The first is, it has to be a song that I absolutely love. It has to be a song that I connect with, I vibe with, that I can listen to over and over throughout the entire practice process and through the editing process and still not be sick of the track. The second thing is I don't always follow the second rule, but I try to, as much as possible, choose a song that's relatively new. The third thing I think about when deciding what song to do next is, do I own all of the elements required to perform this song for you? And what that means essentially is, do I own something that can be comparable to create that sound, or do I own the pieces themselves? There are occasions where I don't own all the elements and I'll still do the song. In these instances, typically it's because the piece that I don't own, whether it's a certain type of stack or maybe a splash cymbal, will be so brief that I will just sub it out for one of my current crash cymbals or my hi-hat or something along those lines. And the last thing I look for when choosing a song is, was this song recorded to a click track? This doesn't come up too often. However, there has for sure been 3 cases where I've found songs that I loved, I really wanted to do a cover of. I've sat down with my DAW and dropped in the song and discovered that this wasn't recorded to a click track. Those instances are fairly rare, but that is the last point that I look for, just to make sure that I can line everything up inside my DAW so we're good for editing later on. So that's the first step, is deciding the song. So the second step in my process to creating a cover video is actually learning the song. Before I even sit down in my kit, there's a couple things I do to prep myself to get ready to learn the song. The first thing is I drop it into my DAW, my digital audio workstation. In my case, I use Logic X Pro. Upon dropping that track in, there's 2 things I need to figure out right away. The first is, what is the tempo of the song? The second thing I do is just simply identify the time signature. A large percent of the time, it's just going to be 4/4 because that's the rule in music. Most of the time, the songs we're listening to are in 4/4. However, I do play a lot of metal tracks, and in the metal genre, we like to experiment with time signature changes, tempo changes, different types of time signatures. Things can get all over the place. So I make sure that all of the switches are in place. I make sure if there's any tempo ramps, any tempo changes, any time signature changes, that's all lined up and ready to go, so that when I sit down with my drum set and Logic X, I'm all set to learn the song. The last thing I do on the software side of things before actually playing the song or playing along to it is I go through, and now that the time signature and tempo changes are in place, I cut the song up into sections. I place some markers down and title everything, starting obviously with like an intro, and then we go into a verse, a chorus, maybe a pre-chorus before the chorus. Along with dropping the markers for these sections, I'm also going to color code the sections themselves, just to give me a better sense of where I am visually when I look over at my laptop while it's next to me and I'm learning the song on my kit or whatever it is. Typically, it takes me about 1 week to learn a song to the point where I can record it as a cover. In order for a song to be at that point, however, I have to learn the song to 100% note for note perfection. I have to know where all of the cymbals are going to be, where the accents are. I have to know all the fills inside and out and have everything ready so that I can record the video aspect of it. There's a reason why I have to have it note for note. We're going to come back to that at a later step here in the video. In order to get it note for note, it typically takes me about a week. I'll start on the Monday, and on Monday, I try and learn maybe a section or 2, sometimes 3. So for most songs, what that looks like is figuring out the intro, the first verse, and then either the pre-chorus or the chorus. By Tuesday, I'm learning the post-chorus if there is one. Then I move right into the second verse, then a pre-chorus if there's that, onto the chorus. And I try and get to the point where by Wednesday, I have everything up until the bridge done. This way, when I start my Wednesday practice session, I can learn the bridge, and then the last two sections of the song typically are going to be a chorus or a double chorus, something along those lines, and I already know those from the choruses before. This means that Thursday and Friday are just going to be rehearsal days. I'm going to sit down with the track on loop, play it over and over and over for my entire session on both of those 2 days, have it ready note for note, and then I can begin my recording process over the weekend. So just going backwards there to sum up step 2, we're going to drop the song into the DAW, figure out the time signature and the tempo, identify any changes and where they land, break the song up into sections, color code those sections and label them, and then sit down at the kit and actually begin the learning process. My learning process takes about 5 days. So once the weekend hits, we're on to step 3 of the recording process, which is actually recording the audio. When recording the audio, the first thing I tackle is the drum shells, which would be my kick drum, my snare drum, my floor tom, and my rack tom. In order to record these, I don't own a completed mic set, so I don't record these live in my basement. However, here's how I go about getting the sound of my drums into these covers. I sit down at my electric kit, which is the kit that I practice at. It's a TD25KV. I unplug all of the cymbal triggers from the electric kit. I plug the brain of the TD25 into my MacBook Pro via a USB connection. And then I record MIDI events from the TD25 over top of the song that I'm working on. Because I unplugged the cymbals, I don't have any of the cymbal MIDI. I only have shell MIDI showing up inside of my DAW. The reason why I do this is because I actually have pre-recorded samples of the acoustic kit you see in all of my videos. So by recording the shells into my computer as MIDI events, then I can go and assign my drum set onto those MIDI events. I also will capture velocity and timing during this process. It's the next best thing I can do to not owning a mic set and getting phenomenal sounding drums every single time. Because when we sampled the drum set, we use top of the line mics in a properly built space so that the drums will sound as good as possible. This way I don't have to rely on the acoustics in my basement or mics or even my own knowledge of the recording process when I'm putting together my next song. It's as simple as just playing the song on my electric kit and then assigning the sounds from my acoustic kit. Once the shells are taken care of, I'm on to the second half of step 3, which is recording my overhead mics. I use two Audio-Technica AT2020s as my right and left overhead mics. I line these up on the right and left side of my kit, and then just before I go and record, I take the kick pedal off of my drum set and I layer towels over the rack tom and floor tom. And then lastly, I place my practice pad on my snare drum. So while I'm playing the song, I'm only capturing the overheads. There is no bleed from my shells because I'm not actually playing them. They're just muted. Now, step 3, as you can see, is part of the reason why I have to learn these songs note for note, because I'm layering shells that I record separately from overheads on top of one another, and everything's got to be accurate so that it makes sense when I layer this inside of my DAW. Okay, now that the audio has been taken care of, I move on to the video portion of this process, which is step 4. So let me just recap real quick, catch us up to speed. Step 1 was identifying what song to play. Step 2 was learning the song. Step 3 was capturing the audio, both shells and overhead. And now step 4 is recording the video. Because I only own one camera, if I want multiple angles, I have to do all the different angles in separate takes. I play the song through about 8 different times, and every time I play the song, I play it note for note, and then I move the camera around the room. This way, when I line up the video with all the different angles, with the audio that's been recorded separately, everything's going to be lined up perfectly. It is all dependent on the fact that I learn everything note for note so that everything will be synced when it comes to editing later on. That's all I really have to say about the recording process from a video standpoint. I just hit record, sit down at the kit, play the song through, and then move the camera around. In a future video, when I talk about gear, I can get more involved with what kind of in-ear setup I use, how I run my monitors while I'm playing the songs, and we'll talk about those types of things. But for now, to keep it simple, I press record on the camera, do a take, move the camera, press record again. Okay, so The fifth and final step in the process comes down to editing. Once I have everything captured, I sit down at my computer rig, which is directly behind me here, and I start the editing process. I usually will start with fleshing out the audio into a rough draft first. I use Logic Pro X to do so. Then I'll move on to the video. I use 2 different video suites. The first one I use is iMovie. The second one is Adobe Premiere Pro CC 2018. The reason why I use 2 different suites is because I originally started on iMovie because of the simplicity of it. And now for the last several videos, I'm starting to move into the Adobe Premiere space because there's some things that I want to be able to do that iMovie just limits me in. However, for the time being, because I don't know Premiere as well as iMovie, I am using both. And that's pretty much it. That's 1 through 5 on the 5 steps of how I create these videos. So I hope this video answers all those questions that I've been getting throughout the years. Maybe this helped you in breaking down or thinking about how you're going to go about creating your own covers. I do want to wrap up by saying one last point. The process that I just laid out for you is always changing. I'm always trying things differently and adding gear to the process. The more gear that I will be able to accumulate in the future will change the way I have this workflow set up. Eventually, I would like to get to the point where I have 8 cameras in a space, around a drum set, and a full mic kit, and I can sit down and play the song through once. It would be so much less work for me. But for the time being, this is how I go about getting the best video and audio quality as I can for the gear that I have in my possession. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of my process. Let me know how you go about dealing with these things on your own. You guys can connect with me further at any of my social media links listed in the description below. Facebook, my YouTube, my Instagram. That's not right. You're on YouTube. What the fuck? You guys can connect with me further at any of my social media links. My Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram. They're all listed in the description below. Thanks for checking out this video, and I will see you guys soon with something new.